Welcome to the Nursing Post podcast, All Nursing All the Time with Ashley Moore and Rosa Horsley. In today's episode, we continue our conversation about donating life. Our goal is always to inform and to start conversation. In the last episode, we talked about what to expect if you're a patient and you are receiving a transplant. But there is a completely other side to this coin, and that's being the donor. There are two types of donation, living and deceased.
Statistics, according to organdonor.gov, in 2020, more than 5,700 transplants were made possible by living donors, and nearly 6,000 living donations take place each year. That's about 4 out of every 10 donations. One donor can save 8 lives and enhance the lives of 75 more. That is astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
Each year, about 30,000 donors provide life-saving and life-enhancing tissue.
So I'm going to go over deceased donors. Rosa's going to go over living. So I'm going to start with the deceased, and that begins before, of course, you're deceased. You need to register to be a donor in your state, and you can do that by going to www.organdonor.gov/register.html. This also can be done when you renew your driver's license. There's a question that you can,
check the box on your app.
Exactly. The donor's death is most often from an illness or an accident, such as like a severe head trauma, a brain aneurysm, stroke, things like that make other organs still viable. Artificial and mechanical support help keep blood flow and oxygen going to the other organs, so those other organs remain intact and ensure that they stay viable. Tests are performed to confirm the absence of brain or brainstem activity, so that way you can actually declare somebody brain dead, because you don't want to take organs from somebody who's not dead.
Yeah, because, that would make them a living donor. You know what I'm saying? And which we'll talk about later.
Right.
And it's illegal to take somebody's organs without their consent.
Yes. Which we will talk a lot about
in the next episode.
And when you match organs from deceased donors to patients on the waiting list, there are a lot of different factors. Blood type, body size, the severity of medical condition, the distance. If somebody is in Virginia and another person's in California, that's a problem. And the patient's wait time and the patient availability, which patients are supposed to be available at all times, but we all know that there are other circumstances. For example, if a patient can be contacted, if they making sure that they don't have a current infection or there's not a temporary reason why the transplant can't take place.
Absolutely. So with living donors, they're still alive. They still have cognitive mental function, and they're in good overall physical and mental health. And legally, they have to be 18 years of age or older. Some medical conditions can prevent you from being a living donor, such as high uncontrolled blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, certain infections, and any uncontrolled psychiatric conditions. Of course, there is a donor organ matching that takes place, and the Organ Procurement and Transplant Network, OPTN's computer system, matches the donor's organs to the potential recipients. The policies regulate how donor organs are matched and assigned to patients on a waiting list. The organs are matched by blood type and how long the patient has been on the waiting list. And there's a different policy in place for each organ.
So there's no way for a doctor to have their patient move up on the waiting list. There's an algorithm for the waiting list. You can't just say, oh, my patient needs it more than your patient, because every doctor is going to be biased to their own patient.
Absolutely. So there are different types, of donations of living. There's directed and paired, and indirected is the most common type of donation, which means the donor names a specific person to receive the transplant. So this would be one of those situations where, like, if I had a sister and she was a match, tissue match, blood type match, and she was willing to give me her kidney or her lung or what have you.
Right.
Like that would be a direct name person,
Right.
a family member, someone that's willing to do it. If the testing reveals that the donor wouldn't be a good match, then some places will start to try to do paired donation if it's an option at that facility.
This is really cool. I didn't know this was a thing until Rosa was telling me about it. I'm like, you can actually, it makes sense. Why would you not?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, if you decide not to do the paired, you would go on a waiting list and then you'd be matched that way. But this whole concept, I'm actually getting goosebumps now. This whole concept about the paired transplant, I have to say it is new. Not all facilities practice in this because literally it is like the perfect storm has to happen. Certain things have to align and everything has to be perfect in order for the situation to become perfect.
Right.
Which is hard. Perfection is hard.
It is. It is. But to me, this would be a faster way of trying to create this perfect storm than the perfect storm of somebody
waiting
having
on
to
a
pass.
list.
Right.
Absolutely. So sometimes a transplant candidate has someone who wants to donate an organ to them, but the tests reveal that they're not a good match. So let's say in my previous scenario, like my sister wasn't a match, but she might be a match for somebody else, and that somebody else might be a match for me.
Right. So what you're doing is saying, if I need a transplant and you need a transplant, and we both have siblings that are willing to give us their organs, but they're not matches for us, but
they're matches for you.
Right. But we can swap. They're still giving up the same organ.
Just not to you.
Just not to you. But
you're getting somebody else's because of them donating their organ.
Right. So my sister donates to you. Your sister donates to me. And we're all having the same surgery. We're all coming out ahead. It's a win-win for everybody.
Everybody's life is
the only thing
saved.
is it's now Rosa's sister's giving me my kidney. My sister's giving her kidney to Rosa. But everybody is we're just all swapping kidneys.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what it's called. It's called organ exchange or swap. I guess depending on the facility, they might want to use one word over the other, which I kind of understand. So like,
yeah, not very professional.
Yeah, I know.
We're having a kidney swap over here.
Oh, meet me at the swap meet with your kidney. You know what I mean? Like, I can understand how it might sound a little off. So like Ashley was saying, let's say Ashley wants to donate to her sister, Tiffany, but they do not have matching blood types. And I want to donate to my husband, JR, but we're also not a match and we're not compatible. And I'm talking about organs, not my marriage.
Of course.
Okay. So by swapping donors, that means I would be a match for Ashley's sister, Tiffany, and Tiffany would match for JR. 2 transplants are possible.
Right.
And then this exchange does involve multiple living donors, but it helps everybody.
But you already had the willing living donors.
Absolutely.
You're not asking people who weren't willing. They were already saying, I'll give up my kidney if it'll save your life.
Absolutely. And in that show that I was watching, that medical show that I was watching, this ended up being the case. Like her friend was not a match for the recipient.
Mm-hmm.
So she ended up giving her liver to someone else. And then someone else was able to give their liver to the recipient. So I was so excited because we were doing this episode. And then I was watching the same thing that we were getting ready to talk about. And I was like, yes.
It all lines up.
This is meant to be, me and my signs.
Yes.
This is a sign that it's meant to be. For living donors, they can donate one of their 2 kidneys, one of 2 lobes of their liver, a lung, a part of the lung, a part of the pancreas, or part of the intestines. They can donate tissue, which is skin. They use that for surgeries. So, and grafts, bone for knee replacements and hip replacements, healthy cells from bone marrow and, umbilical cord blood, amnion donated after childbirth, and blood, including white and red blood cells, platelets, and serum that carries blood cells through the circulatory system.
And that's a lot. Like, I didn't know that a living donor could donate bone.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
But I guess if you've had surgery to take something out, if they can use it for something else,
absolutely.
Go for it. Like, I mean, if you lost a whole bunch of weight and you have all this extra skin that you're getting cut off.
Yeah, they can use that to graft.
They can use it to graft. And like, you don't need it. Like, I don't understand why you even say no.
I don't know.
It's going in the trash.
Well, technically, yeah, it is.
Not
trash,
biohazard trash, but
not
still,
the trash sitting in your city dump.
No, but still.
Yeah, metaphorically speaking, it's going in the dump. Yeah.
Right. As Rosa said at the beginning of this, if you're deceased, you can impact a ton of people. You can donate both kidneys, your liver. You have 2 lungs that can be donated, a heart valves, a pancreas, intestines. In 2014, hands and faces were added to the transplant list, which is weird, but whatever. Corneas, tissues, and tissue has to be done quickly. Middle ear, skin, bone marrow, veins, cartilage, tendons, ligaments, cord, blood, stem cells, peripheral blood, stem cells, blood, and platelets. So just think, one person has all of that to offer. And if you break it down even more, how many veins do you have that could be taken out that you can use, that people could use in grafting and bypass? There's so many things to that.
Absolutely.
So when you start thinking of all the people you can impact, and I mean, of course, depending upon why you die, some of these you might not have the ability.
Yeah, you might not be a qualifier. Like, let's say you tragically accidentally die in a car crash or whatever, but you were a smoker for 50 years.
Right. Your lungs aren't going to be good.
Exactly.
But your corneas may be fine or whatever. So there are so many different options. So that's why being a donor, even if you think that you may not have anything viable, let somebody else figure that out.
Yeah. Not to be coy, but in the end, it's not going to matter. You know what I mean? Like,
my point exactly.
Okay. I'm grateful for organ donation. And one of the reasons why I became an organ donator was because when I had HELLP syndrome, I was needing that platelet transplant. So I am all for organ donation.
Oh, well, of course, because you had to be the recipient of something.
If I didn't have it, I wouldn't be here right now having this conversation with you.
Right.
And somebody was willing to do that so that I could be here. And I have nothing but, I can't even express it in words. So there are pre and post-op expectations for the living donors. Of course, prior, your first visit is going to be with the transplant coordinator. It's going to be an education session. Then you'll have an appointment with a physician who is specializing in that organ that's being transplanted. And of course, there's going to be some evaluations. You're going to have the pre-transplant coordinator to help set up your testings and your meetings. They're going to review your insurance coverage, calculate how much out-of-pocket expense you may have for the transplant, and any medications that you may need to take after you've given your organ. There are going to be blood tests done for typing genetic markers and antibodies. And after the completed evaluation, testing, and appointments are done, your case is reviewed by a specialty of physicians, that multidisciplinary team, to determine the course of treatment. And post-op, in most cases, you should be able to resume your daily activities within 3 to 6 months after the procedure. And you should receive education about your recovery period. That would be including any wound care, line care, showering, driving, your physical activities, and your regular ADLs. They're going to educate you about diet, medication, emotional issues, and the important task of preventing infections. They'll also educate you to expect and what's going to happen with your body after you've donated. They're going to remind you to prevent infection, which, we talked about in our last episode. So it's important for you to follow your transplant team's instructions for preventing infection. Stay away from sick people, be cautious and hygienic around pets. Make sure you're washing your hands consistently with soap and water. Use disposable paper towels instead of reusing washcloths. And you're going to have additional instructions. And if you have questions, you're going to have that transplant care team available to help you out.
For sure. The impact of donating is huge, and I think that we have covered that pretty well. One donor can save 8 lives, and like Rosa said, can impact so many more. There are positive and life-changing effects that come from donating and receiving organs. And for the recipient, receiving an organ prolongs life and allows for a better quality of life, which is really big for Rosa and I.
Absolutely.
And for the donor, the experience of giving up an organ to a person in need can really serve as a very positive and rewarding experience. And so the next step lies in your own hands, and that's to become a registered donor and to save lives is very simple as, reaching out to a donor center. You can visit the OPTN Member Directory for a list of transplant centers, and you can make the next step of having that initial screening and have an independent donor advocate to help you navigate, all the system and questions that you have on your behalf. And you can register in your state to become an organ donor. And again, that web address is www.organdonor.gov/register.html. And we will link that in our show notes.
Absolutely.
On our website.
Like we always do.
Yes. We always leave all this stuff, but just in case you're like, I'm never going to remember that web address, which is what I would say to myself if I heard it in a podcast, you can go to our website for that.
Which is www.thenursingpostpodcast.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and please feel free to leave your thoughts and your comments. And thanks again for listening to the Nursing